وحلقة بلاء قد فك. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يداه، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة بي إليه عظيما، وغناك عنه قديم وهو عندي كثير وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي وصفحك عن ظلمي وسترك عن قبيح عملي وحلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك وأريتني من قدرتك وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا لا خائفا ولا وجلا مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك. كأن لي التطول عليك فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادل ولا شبيه يشاكل ولا ظهير يعاضد. قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أنادي، ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا عاصي، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هدية قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مولقة قد أراني، فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائل ولا يخيب آمل. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبين الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها، وترجف الأرض وعمارها، وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على الأئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة اللهم صل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر، وحفه بملائكتك المقربين، وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، وابدله من بعد خوفه أمنا، يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك، حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملنا، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغربنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صل على محمد وآل محمد وآل. I would now like to welcome Sayyid Mehdi Modarressi to address the lecture for tonight. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
अली को बात करनी أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الغرر الميامين، سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا، مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة، الحجة ابن الحسن العسكري، فداه أرواح العالمين. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. For the hastening of the reappearance of the Master, the Savior, the Avenger, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Amir al-Mu'mineen says in letter number 31 in Nahj al-Balagha, and I quote, من الوالد الفان المقر بالزبان المستسلم للدهر الذام للدنيا الساكن مساكن الموتى والضاعن عنها غدا، إلى المولود المؤمل ما لا يدرك السالك سبيل من قد هلك غرض الأسقام ورهينة الأيام وعبد الدنيا ورمية المصائب وتاجر الغرور وغريم المنايا وأسير الموت وحليف الهموم وقرين الأحزان ونصب الآفات وصريع الشهوات وخليفة الأموات. أما بعد، صدق مولانا أمير المؤمنين ويعسوب الدين وإمام المتقين أسد الله الغالب علي بن أبي طالب عليه صلوات الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين. صلوا على محمد. We said that the Imam begins by introducing himself as the loving, kind, and compassionate father who is about to leave this world. His life has all but ended. His time has all but lapsed. The Imam provides 7 descriptive adjectives for himself, then describes his audience. As we said, the letter seems to be addressed to his son Imam al-Hasan al-Mushtaba, but in reality it addresses all of us. Every single person who passes through this dunya, who comes into this world, faces the same set of dilemma, the same set of problems, the same challenges that the Imam describes. First thing he says about this kind of individual, which includes all of us, إلى المولود, this letter is addressed to the one who was born, the son. Al-Mawlud means the one who was born, but also in Arabic, you could refer to the newborn child as your own. To the child of this world. Al-Mu'ammili ma la yudrik. Some have said yudrak. It has the same meaning. The first feature that the Imam provides for all of us is that when we came into this world, we came with a long list of goals, objectives, and aspirations. We all have hope in achieving those objectives, in reaching our aspirations. Hope is not a bad thing in itself. In fact, in one hadith, the Holy Messenger of God says that al-amalu rahmatul li ummati. Having hope is a mercy for my nation, for my followers. Being hopeful is a good thing. Without hope, no one would do anything. The Prophet then goes on to say that had it not been for hope, no mother would nurse her child. If a mother didn't hope for her child to grow up, become an adult, get married, have children, have a family of his own, this mother wouldn't put in the effort. She wouldn't wake up at the most inconvenient and unusual times of the night and day. She wouldn't put in all the work and effort. She wouldn't be exhausted in raising her child. Had she not hoped for this child to grow and to continue her journey. So the Prophet then says, without hope, no mother would nurse her child, and no farmer would ever plant a tree. A farmer works extremely hard. Very difficult schedules are put in by farmers. Why? Because they hope that if they put in all that effort, this crop will mature. It will then yield some fruits or food or things they could sell and consume. The Prophet says, without hope, none of that would happen. In fact, there's an interesting parable where the hadith states Prophet Isa ala nabiyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam was once sitting with a number of his disciples. He saw an old man who was trying to plant a tree. Now, planting a tree, for those of you who have tried it, is a very laborious task. It's very time consuming. It's difficult. It's hard. Add to that the fact that this person was an elderly man. So when you're old, you'd rather just chill on your couch and enjoy yourself, enjoy your retirement. So Prophet Isa alayhi salam sees this man working hard to plant a tree. So in order to illustrate the importance of hope and the evil nature of despair, Isa prayed to Allah. He said, "Oh Allah, take hope from this man." As soon as he said that, his prayer was answered, and the elderly person simply put the shovel to the side and lied down. Took a nap. Why work the extra? Why put in the extra effort? Why go the extra mile? Why work hard? He simply lied down and started to take a nap. Then Isa alayhi salam made another prayer. He said, "Oh Allah, give him hope." As soon as he said that, the elderly man, the senior, got up and started to dig the ground again and planted the tree. Hope is a good thing. Hope is what pushes us to strive harder, to work, to progress, to earn knowledge, to put that knowledge into practice, and to make a living. People who become hopeless are not well. There are psychological conditions that have symptoms which include despair, losing hope, being in a constant state of fear of dying, for example. They have no hope of living until the next day, let alone the next month or the next year. That is a disease. It needs to be treated. It needs medical attention. It may require medication. However, we should be mindful of the fact that many of our hopes and dreams will in fact never materialize. A lot of us come into this world and we create this image of a life for ourselves, this vision that I will do this and I will do that. If you ask any toddler, if you ask any second grader, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do they usually say? One might say, I want to become an astronaut, even though becoming an astronaut is one of the most difficult things to do. There's only a handful of people who end up succeeding in this endeavor. A lot of people, it requires physical finesse, it requires a lengthy education, it requires a lot of work. And so while they have those dreams when they're young, they will never actually realize them. And this is what the Imam is trying to remind us of. He's trying to remind us that many of the hopes, dreams, aspirations, and visions that you've created for yourself, you will never be able to reach them. Now, what is the consequence of this? If you think you're capable of doing anything, that you can be whoever you want, you can do whatever you want, which is what a lot of parents, in order to motivate their children, this is the language they speak. You could achieve whatever you want in this world as long as you work hard. But this is a false kind of hope. I'm not saying that you shouldn't encourage your children, you should. But if we plant this idea in their head, if this becomes something that we actualize in our own minds, what happens when we don't reach our objectives? What happens when we don't realize our dreams? The end result is going to be disappointment. We will, in fact, despair. Those people who fall in love, at a point in time, if you speak to them, you'll realize that this is absurd. It's ridiculous. But because they've fallen in love, quote unquote, they will think that life without this individual that they have fallen in love with is downright impossible. Which is why some people who find themselves in that position end up committing suicide. The reason for that is because they imagine that life without this individual cannot move on. They aren't able to express that love to that individual. And so despair is the inevitable consequence. Hopelessness. And when they're afflicted with hopelessness, they see no way out. They cannot imagine living without that individual, and so they commit suicide, or at least they attempt self-harm. But when we know, when we acknowledge the fact that many of our hopes and dreams will remain unrealized, that a lot of those hopes and dreams we will take with us to the grave, what happens? If we encounter an obstacle, we won't be faced with hopelessness and despair. We will say, that's a setback. That's a challenge. That's a problem. If I couldn't reach this goal, I'll try and reach another goal. There's plenty of fish in the sea, as they say. If I can't get married to this person, I'm sure there's someone else out there for me. I won't think that life is meaningless and hopeless just because I wasn't able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. So what does the Imam say? The Imam says, I am speaking to you, O son, al-mawlud al-mu'ammil ma la yudrik. The one who has so many dreams, so many aspirations, but you'll never reach many of them. If a young person, for instance, wanted to become an NBA all-star, now, there are physical barriers. There are genetic components. There are things that you simply cannot create for yourself. People who achieve certain objectives do so because of what they call an unfair advantage. Because of this person's genetic makeup, they happen to be tall, they happen to be physically fit, they happen to be strong, they happen to be fast on the field, and so they're able to achieve certain goals. Yes, it's good to give your children different possibilities, provide them with different opportunities, and allow them to prosper in the field that suits them. But to give them false hope is an absolute mistake. So as I said, it is important to cherish and nurture sense of hope in ourselves and our children, but not to make that the be-all and end-all objective of life. Allow them to appreciate the fact that many of their dreams and aspirations will never occur. They'll never reach them. Now, one of the other benefits of this acknowledgement is what? When you understand, listen carefully, when you realize that a lot of your dreams and aspirations will never be achieved, you begin to prioritize. And you prioritize in order of significance and importance. What is it that matters to you the most? If it matters to you to become the single most important brain surgeon in the world, then that's an aspiration, that's an objective that's not available to everyone. However, you begin to recalibrate your objectives. Is this life the most important thing? Is becoming a multimillionaire and retiring at the age of 30 the most important thing? Is becoming famous as a YouTuber or social media personality or what they call influencer the most important thing to you? A lot of people try that and a lot of people fail at that. Instead, you will become more realistic in how you plan your life. Your vision for your time on this earth, this extremely limited time that we have, becomes more realistic instead of being too idealistic. So you understand that your time here is limited. In one hadith, I believe Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam says that, he says, the people who are believers, they've evaluated this life and the next, and they've reached the conclusion that success in the afterlife is a lot more valuable than success in this world. It's a simple math problem. It's not too complicated. If you are traveling from one point to another, from one town to another, do you put in more effort in making sure your seat on the plane is extra comfortable? Or do you care more about your destination? If the time you spend on the aircraft is a little less than ideal, not the most comfortable place, you keep reminding yourself that, hey, this is just a journey. It's a short period of time that I have to spend for another purpose. I'm trying to get somewhere else. And so it's a lot more important if I had to choose between these two. If I had to allocate resources, whether it's my time, my energy, my intellectual prowess, my money, if I had to allocate my resources between making my journey more comfortable or my destination, which is more important? So the Imam says that the believers just happen to be smarter investors. It's not so much about faith, even though, of course, it's faith that makes them believe in the afterlife. But if you looked at it from the perspective of what? Of a merchant, of a businessman who is smart understands that investing in something that lasts is a lot more precious than investing in something that doesn't. So Amir al-Mu'mineen reminds his son that, look, a lot of your dreams, a lot of your aspirations will never be realized, and so you must prioritize. The second thing, or the second description the Imam provides, is he says, as-saliki sabila man qad halak. You, my son, and you, my children, the Imam is telling us that you are treading the path of many who came before you and have perished. As-salik sabil man qad halak, which basically means that this path is well worn. This is a beaten track. This is a journey that many have taken before us, which means that it's very easy to examine their lives. And the Imam elaborates on this later on in the letter. He says, you could look at their lives and understand where they erred and where they succeeded, how they made it and how they perished. If this was a track or a path that no one had taken before, it would be a lot more difficult to decide how to navigate it. But since many people have done this already, it's a lot easier. And so the experiences offered by previous generations is incredibly invaluable. Then the Imam says, غَرَضِ الْأَسْقَامِ. Again, these are all descriptions of human beings. He says, gharad is a target. Suqm is physical disease. Marad is more broad than suqm. Marad means disease, but it could refer to spiritual, psychological, and other forms of ailments. Suqm is a physical sickness. The Imam says that you are all the targets of sicknesses and diseases. Think about this for a second. When we're young, it's easy to feel invincible. We feel strong and powerful. We think the disease is confined to older members of society. It's confined to people who get into accidents. But I'm young and I'm powerful and I'm fit. But the Imam reminds us that we are way weaker than we think. We're way more vulnerable. Think about the fact that a human being is so weak. How long can you survive without food? 2 days, 3 days? I mean, it's the holy month of Ramadan, and often you feel like you can't skip lunch because you're so used to it. If we can survive without food, the maximum is what? A month? People who will go on hunger strikes in prisons, for example, political prisoners have tried this. A month, maybe a month and a half, before they start to force feed you. Ultimately, we are too weak to survive more than a month without food. Forget food. How long can we survive without water? How long can we survive without air? That's how weak we are. تؤذيه البقة. Amir al-Mu'mineen says in a beautiful hadith, says, مسكين ابن Adam. The children of Adam, human beings, are truly pathetic. تؤذيه البقة. One single mosquito in your bedroom can make your sleep absolutely miserable. One mosquito, one fly. And that's not even talking about how mosquitoes cause over 1 million deaths per year. This insignificant flying insect that is so much easier to kill than a fly and a bee, whose sting is very difficult to feel at first. A mosquito causes the death of no less than 1 million people due to malaria. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Miskeen, poor child of Adam, son of Adam. تؤذيه البقة تنتنه العرقة. A little sweat makes a supermodel, the most beautiful person in the world, makes them give off this ugly and nauseating stench that you can't bear sit next to them. تنتنه العرقة وتقتله الشرقة, the Imam says. Sharqa is when you're drinking something or eating something and the water gets stuck in your throat. A tiny amount of water, one date, one piece of chocolate, one piece of bread, whatever, gets stuck in your throat and you die within a matter of seconds. That's how vulnerable we are. That's how weak we are. And yet we think we're so invincible. We're so powerful that no one can touch us. And we feel so arrogant. God forbid someone says something or makes a comment passingly that insults our egoistic personalities. So the Imam says, السالك سبيل من قد هلك غرض الأسقام. You are a target for diseases. ورهينة الأيام. Rahina in the Arabic language is a hostage. Someone who is taken against their will. Someone who is captured. The Imam says that you are all hostages to the passing of the days. In other words, think about the fact that we cannot control a single second that passes. The second that just passed right now, can you take it back? Absolutely not. The days that have lapsed from your life, they're all gone. And we are stuck in this exact moment right now. We're hostages. We can't escape time. We can't escape space. We can't escape anything. We are like someone who's confined to a prison cell, solitary confinement. You can't leave. You can't do anything about it. وَرَهِينَةِ الْأَيَّامِ, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the epic, swears by the era, by the time. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Everyone is losing. Everyone is letting go of their most precious asset, which is time. They say that, in some countries you have people who sell blocks of ice. And they say that somebody was selling a big block of ice in the scorching heat in a place like Najaf or Karachi or whatever. And no one was buying the ice from him. And so he started chanting, announcing. He said, buy my product from me because my product, my very capital, is melting right before my two eyes. Think about the fact that our most precious capital, which is our time, is melting right before our two eyes. We don't realize it because we don't think about it, but we're losing it 1 second at a time, 1 minute at a time. Think about where you were last year, what you did last year. It's gone, far gone. So far, in fact, that you'll never be able to reclaim it. وَرَهِينَةِ الْأَيَّامِ وَرَمِيَّةِ الْمَصَائِبِ. The Imam says that you are being attacked by calamities left, right, and center, constantly. In other words, the Imam is reminding us that there are so many tragedies that you will have to face in the remainder of your life. That's the exact opposite of giving someone false hope. The Imam is saying, no, this is the reality of this world, of this dunya. You will face so many obstacles, so many calamities, so many tragedies. You have to prepare for them. Then the Imam says, what I think is the most bitter portion of this segment of the letter. He says, وَعَبْدِ الدُّنْيَا. I'm addressing the one who's a slave of this world. Dunya is called dunya because in the Arabic language, something that's lowly, something that is trivial, something that is beneath something else is called dunya, dani. This world is called dunya because it's that trivial. It's that useless unless you actually take advantage of the time that you have. But it is a means of loss for so many people. وَعَبْدِ الدُّنْيَا. I'll translate the other descriptions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, then I'll get back to this point, inshallah. وَعَبْدِ الدُّنْيَا وَتَاجِرِ الْغُرُورِ. Tajir in Arabic is a trader. You have someone who's a ba'i', meaning that you have a product and you sell it. But if you sell and buy things for a living, then you're not just a ba'i', you're a tajir. You buy, you sell, you exchange goods for money or other goods. The Imam says that you are all traders of what? Ghurur. Ghurur means deception. The reason an arrogant person is called maghrur is because that person is deceived by an unrealistic image of him or herself. You become arrogant when you think of yourself as being something that you're not, as being stronger than you actually are, as being better than you actually are. That kind of person is called maghrur. But ghurur means deception. Tajirul ghurur means that you sell deception and you buy deception. This entire life is based on a lie. The lie that we get to live in this world eternally. The lie that we get to enjoy life in an uninterrupted manner. The Imam says, you are a trader of deception. Then he says, وَتَاجِرُ الْغُرُورِ وَغَرِيمِ الْمَنَايَا. Ghareem in Arabic is someone that you owe something to. If the debt collectors come and knock on your door because you haven't paid your credit card bill, the debt collectors are called what? Ghurama. It means you owe them something. The Imam, look at these beautiful descriptions. He says, وَغَرِيمَ الْمَنَايَا. You are indebted to your death. In other words, when death comes knocking, you owe it something. You owe death your life. Not your money, not your property, not your car. Your life, you are indebted to death. Which means there's no escape. There's no way around it, as we discussed last night. وَغَرِيمَ الْمَنَايَا وَأَسِيرِ الْمَوْتِ. You are captured by death. As Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam famously says, خُطَّ الْمَوْتُ عَلَى وُلْدِ آدَمَ مَخَطَّ الْقِلَادَةِ عَلَى جِيدِ الْفَتَاةِ. Death is surrounding, or death is, khutta means it's been prescribed. Death is prescribed for the children of Adam the way a necklace surrounds the neck of a young girl, which has been interpreted in many different ways, but in its most basic form, it means that it has you on a chokehold. It surrounds your neck. As I said, there's a kill switch in our very DNA, in the very code that governs our lives, which is apoptosis. There's a kill switch right there in the code. There's nothing we can do about it. وأسير الموت وحليف الهموم. Halif is an ally. In other words, what does an ally do? If I am in an alliance with you, that means that if I have a problem with someone, you have to stand with me. The Imam says that the children of Adam are haliful humum. You are an ally with worries and concerns. In other words, you're always partner with concerns, with worries, with things that occupy your mind. When you wake up in the morning, there's always something that occupies your mind, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's someone's sickness, whether it's studying and getting a degree. There's always something that occupies our mind, that keeps us in a state of concern and pain and difficulty. And no one is immune from this, by the way. Nobody. I have plenty of examples in my own life, having dealt with people who are incredibly affluent, people who are so rich beyond your imagination, billionaires that I've met in my life. And I can tell you for a fact that they are not just as concerned and worried as the rest of us, but in fact, a lot more so. We think that if we have more money, then we can rest and we can have a sense of comfort and convenience. But the fact of the matter is, the more money you accumulate, the more wealth you have, the more concern that you have. Yes, you'll be able to buy a bigger mansion. You'll be able to buy all the cars that you've always desired. You'll be able to buy all the jewelry, all the, nice things that people who are rich seem to flaunt in front of us. And now social media does that as well and perpetuates this problem. You'll think that you'll be more comfortable. But the fact is that despite all the wealth, despite all the assets, despite all the possessions that they have, there's a lot more humum on their mind, as the Imam says. Haliful humum. وَقَرِينُ الْأَحْزَانِ. By the way, we could expand on these more, but as I said, the letter is lengthy and we're trying to go through it in the short time that we have, inshallah. وَقَرِينُ الْأَحْزَانِ. And sadness is something you will constantly face. Once again, disappointment, problems, challenges, loss, whether it's possessions or family members. There is a constant cycle of sadness that you will have to face, tied to sadness. وَالنُّصُبُ الْآفَاتِ. Faced with blights, plagues. An afa is what you call a plant that requires a certain pesticide. The reason they use pesticides is what exactly? Because certain fruits, certain vegetation, certain plants attract certain insects and diseases, right? That's why they have to treat them with pesticides and other chemicals to ensure this problem is alleviated. But the Arabic language, when we say afat, it is more broad than that. It means that with every good thing, there's always a negative side effect. It's a beautiful tree, it's a beautiful plant, but there's a negative side effect that comes with it. It's a bigger house, but there's a negative side effect. There's a bigger mortgage to pay, which means more hard work and more maintenance and more cleaning and more employees and more maids and more butlers. That's how it works. You buy an expensive car, but then God forbid there's a tiny scratch on this car. You wouldn't care if your car was an old clunker from 1990. You wouldn't care if your car was worth $500 on Gumtree. You wouldn't care if your car was cheap, but the second it becomes more expensive, once again, the idea is an expensive luxury sports car makes you happy. But if happiness is what you seek, this certainly doesn't provide it to you. Because the sadness that elevates and increases with the level of luxury that comes with this item is proportionately high. وَنُصُبِ الْآفَاتِ وَصَرِيعَ الشَّهَوَاتِ. The Imam says you are defeated by temptations. You see someone who's buff, someone who works out, and he's totally lit, big muscles, right? And yet this person will find it difficult to wake up for salah. So what's all the muscle for then? What are you going to do with that? Well, mostly it's not to lift weights or anything. It's just to take pictures, topless, post them on Instagram and get more likes. That's really what it's all about. It's not so that you would work harder. It's not so that you would fight for a good cause. It's not so that you could serve those who are poor. Again, I'm not someone who says that going to the gym is a bad thing, but really, what is the intention? What is the purpose? If I am stronger than 10 people in this room, and that doesn't even give me the strength to wake up for salah, what's the point? It doesn't give me the strength to close my eyelids when I come across a haram sight. What's the point? That means I am the weakest person in the room, doesn't it? وَصَرِيعَ الشَّهَوَاتِ. The Imam says you are defeated by temptations. وَخَلِيفَةِ الْأَمْوَاتِ. And you are a successor to those who are dead. Once again, the Imam reminds us of the circle of life and the fact that people came before us. We are merely succeeding them. In other words, we are just a tiny blip on this journey of life. We think of ourselves as being incredibly significant, that we are the infantile centers of the universe. But all you have to do is watch one of those videos where you zoom out of Earth and go all the way out to the visible universe to remember just how insignificant you are. To remind yourself of just how tiny you are. If a drone goes up 1,000 meters into the air, it won't be able to see me anymore. That's how tiny this little speck is. And then I think I can challenge God. I think I can face the wrath of my Lord. The Imam says that you are a nobody. All you are is someone who came after the people who have already gone, and one day soon others will succeed you. Then the Imam says, Amma ba'd. Now that we've described all of these ailments, all of these diseases, let's try and provide solutions to them. Let's try and help guide you towards the means with which you can alleviate these, you can overcome these challenges and be a better person than just a footnote in the annals of history. But the one thing I wanted to talk about for just a few minutes, inshallah, is the passage where the Imam says, Abdud dunya. You are a slave of this world. I mentioned this hadith last night when I said, Hubbud dunya ra'su kulli khati'ah. The love of this world is the cause of every transgression, every mistake, every problem is the love of this world. One of the things that the love of this world causes and creates is this attachment to the pleasures of this life. The kind of attachment that causes nothing but despair and disappointment. And at the point of death, this attachment is incredibly palpable and very, very difficult to overcome. One of the ulama used to say that when you have a fight, maybe fight is a strong word, when you have a disagreement with your spouse, a lot of people become upset. A lot of people think that, again, they have this romanticized vision of what marriage is like, and so the first sign of trouble, and they're looking for an exit. They're looking for a way out, and they call the sheikh and say, I want to get a divorce. But when you have a disagreement with your spouse, this is perhaps a very different way to look at marital disputes. He said, there is a silver lining in this. There's a good thing about having disagreements with your wife. What is that? He says, so that the attachment you have to your spouse gets weaker. Imagine a lot of people nowadays, especially, the Instagram and the TikTok generation, they think that marriage is about this unconditional, unlimited love between husband and wife, right? But that's not necessarily a good thing. If you have unlimited, infinite, unconditional love, what do you think is going to happen to you when you lose your spouse? If you had to leave your spouse for a month, it would be incredibly difficult. Now imagine you're facing down the abyss of death and you're told you have to leave your wife or your husband behind. And so even some of those disputes, some of those fights are good for you because it weakens the attachment just enough so that when the moment comes, you're able to bid them farewell. You're able to leave. You're actually willing to die, as opposed to feeling so attached to the things that you have in this world, whether it's your wife, your children, your house, your car, your money, whatever. You must be able to let go. And the way you let go is by having problems with your possessions, which is why a lot of the challenges and pains that we experience in this life are good for us from this perspective, because they weaken the attachment, as I said, and they allow us to leave them all behind. Kafa bil mawti wa'idha. I will conclude with this. Rasulullah, the Holy Messenger of God, says that being mindful of death is by far the most powerful means of sobering up. The most critical way of turning to what is actually important and setting your priorities straight, as we said earlier, is to remind yourself of death. Weaken these attachments. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll talk about how exactly to do that. I will provide some practical tips from the traditions of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam. Now, I mentioned last night that one of the most ghastly and heartbreaking sights that Lady Zainab saw was the sight of her brother's head being held on a spike. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. And it's at that moment that she said, Ya hilalan lamma istatamma kamala zaghahu khasfuhu fa'abda غروبا ما توقعت يا شقيق فؤادي كان هذا مقدرا مكتوبا. Brother, I expected everything. I'd been foretold by my father, by my brothers Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, that Aba Abdullah will be slaughtered, he will be killed, his family, his children, that we will be taken as captives. I knew all that, but I never expected to see your head on a tall spear. And as difficult as that was, Lady Zainab is now speaking to her brother. After the death of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, Zainab faced unspeakable tragedies, things that occurred in the aftermath of the day of Ashura and the massacre of Aba Abdullah, the ransacking and the ambushing of the camp of Imam al-Hussein alone gave Lady Zainab so much material to now share with her brother, to complain to him, to tell him of how they were all whipped, starting from the land of Karbala all the way to Sham for 40 days and nights. She had so much to share with him, and yet she only chose one thing to share. What was that? she said to him in that same poem, she said, أخي هذه فاطمة الصغيرة كلمها فلقد كاد قلبها أن يذوبا. She said, my brother, Ya Aba Abdullah, don't worry about me. I won't be complaining to you. All I ask you is that you speak to your 3-year-old daughter. Her heart is melting. She can't bear not being with her father. Throughout this journey, she would tell others, she would tell those vicious men who were whipping her, she would tell them, wait till I get to my father and tell him what you did to me. Ya Aba Abdullah, speak to her, say something to her. She's dying of grief, she's yearning to see you. And it was only a matter of a day or two before she died of grief, having seen her father's لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم، يا الله 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 يا أرحم الراحمين، عجل اللهم فرج إمام زماننا. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والناصر، اجعلنا من خيرة أعوانه وأنصاره ومقوية سلطانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. تقبل اللهم أعمالنا وصيامنا، ارحم موتانا وموتى المؤمنين ومن مضى من هذا الجمع والعلماء والصالحين والشهداء، نهدي لهم ثواب المجلس وثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي الباقر، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي التقي، وعلي بن محمد الهادي، والحسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان،
عجل الله تعالى فرجك، وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك، وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يا صاحب
يا صاحب الزمان أدركني. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، وليا وحافظا وقائدا ناصرا وذليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم